just like, force the writing out,
Right,
especially when you're super busy.
Yeah, for me, what it is I can procrastinate.
Well, it was great today. We actually went through the Arby's drive-through today, and we got to the window and we're just making small talk with the cashier as she's waiting for the food, and we were talking about how it's crazy out there with COVID-19 and how people can't even get out to the stores because it's crazy. And I told her, I was like, yeah, my wife right here actually has coronavirus, and that's why we have to go through the drive-through. You should have seen her face. It was amazing.
I like how you point to me like I'm your wife.
My wife was sitting right there.
Yeah, Heather was like, no. I do not have coronavirus.
Oh, but it was great. It was great. Well, welcome everyone to Spilling Ink. The gang's all here, and we even have our little stowaway, Julia.
Hello.
Welcome, Julia.
So it's going to be a fun show tonight because we also have Jane tonight, and I didn't expect to see her, so this is going to be awesome.
No.
Yeah, and the coolest thing about having Jane on, I think, is that now I'm not the oldest person on this show.
But I'm just overly happy. So.
Well, Katie, do you think you could introduce our sponsor tonight?
Oh no, you're gonna put me on the spot.
I didn't
What
have her
the
pulled
heck?
up. Well, I'll tell you. While Katie's looking up what we're supposed to say about our sponsor, I'm going to tell you what I think about our sponsor. Our sponsor for this show is Creative Edge Publicity. Absolutely wonderful. We really love working with them, and they are the ones that's making it possible for us to use StreamYard, which is this video platform that we're on. It's a really great program, and also to produce the audio podcast for all of you. So it's been really cool to partner with them, and they also send us all sorts of wonderful guests. And Christie has actually had some experience with Creative Edge as well, I believe. And I think that your experience has been positive, hasn't it?
It has. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mickey, how was that for the plug, Mickey? I couldn't remember the script, but I tried to do a good job there.
All right, we're going to have to train you. You're going to have to remember this. All right, repeat after me. Creative Edge Publicity.
Partners in advantageship with
your brand.
Your brand. Your future.
Advocates of collaboration and believers in partnership in the ever-changing literary industry.
Those are some big words in there. Those are publicist words right there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to say that without fumbling it.
Well, long story short, guys, Creative Edge Publicity works with authors, indie authors, mainstream, big five authors, anybody. So if you're looking for a publicist, somebody to help you get more attention to you, your brand, your books, that's what they do. So that's a good idea to get in touch with them. So, but welcome to Spilling Ink Live. It's so good to see everybody. Look, we've also already got comments going on there.
Right.
We've got Joe and Regine and Amanda. Oh, Amanda. I don't know if I know Amanda. Amanda K. Cardenas? Awesome. And then Rebecca Jonesy, of course, our longtime favorite here. Big shout out to all of you who are on the comments. Thank you so much for joining us. And now the lovely Katie Salidas is going to introduce the show in a very serious manner and talk about our guests and all that kind of stuff. Take it away, Katie.
As long as I'm not echoing, apparently we've got some comments here about the echo coming off me right now.
Oh, okay. Guys, am I echoing as well?
No.
I think it's Jane and Katie, and it might be me. I think I'm echoing now, too.
Uh-huh.
I don't hear an echo on anyone.
So before the show, Jason, it was just you. Now it's everyone else.
Yeah.
Wow.
Excellent. Well,
Lovely
Is this a little
technology.
better for me?
well, while they're figuring that out, I'm going to introduce our guest.
Okay.
We have Christie Stratos on the show, who has been on several times before. She is a wonderful author and editor and a show host herself. How are you doing tonight, Christie?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I always love coming on here. We never know what we're going to talk about. It's so much fun.
Oh, it's going to be good. I've got some good ideas. You think the Arby's incident was funny? We've got some more stuff to go on. I'm talking Lake Placid 3 type material, all right?
I'm
She
ready.
missed that conversation.
Oh, you missed the Lake Placid 3 conversation? Don't worry, we'll recap the whole thing just for you, Christy.
Well, I'm glad.
Oh, everyone but Jason was
Oh.
echoing. Excellent. I love it.
I told you to close the door. It was the
It's
magic.
not the door.
But you did stop echoing, though.
Right.
Am I still echoing?
I can't hear an echo on anyone, just so you know. I mean,
Oh no, am I still
perfectly
echoing?
fair.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can hear it.
Cool. Well, and our other guest tonight is Marina Raydun. Marina Raydun. That's
Hi.
correct, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I felt like I stumbled over your last name, but Raydun is correct.
Yeah, perfect.
Excellent. All right. Okay, fine. It's only Jason who's not going. We know that Jason is perfect,
Way to
right,
go.
guys? Well, Marina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I don't know where to start. I guess I was born in a country that no longer exists, namely the former Soviet Union. My family moved here when I was 11, but I'm 12. So I grew up in Brooklyn. And about 4 years ago, we moved to New Jersey, suburb, schools, that's all that. And I have 5 titles to my name. I write in the literary fiction genre, and within that, I do like the opposite of what the standard advice is the general advice is to stay strictly within the genre rules, give the reader exactly what they expect. I try to experiment and push within that just because my ultimate goal is just to be the best writer I can be. And so within the literary genre penumbra, I have a little bit of suspense. I have some immigrant lit, some contemporary women's lit. So I've got a little bit of everything for every reader out there, especially if they're on quarantine. Oh, Jason, you muted.
Yeah, I'm still muted. Everybody's yelling at me to mute myself on the comments because they think it's me causing this. But really, there are 3 other people that don't have headphones in right now. So it's not just me, all right?
I'm not home. I don't have access to headphones. I'm so sorry.
It's you, Jason. It's definitely you.
Oh,
Not when
gosh.
you're muted.
Well, I'm just going to mute myself and reply to comments. Fine.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
But
I
you know
don't
what?
hear it.
The echo's gone.
Yeah. I know. We're all unmuted.
You'll have to sign, Jason. Sorry.
Oh, I think we've upset him.
That's because everybody else in the house is streaming stuff. I don't have any bandwidth down here.
I'm in the same boat.
And I'm just screaming, so. Anyway.
Nobody's going to say anything. So, Lake Placid 3. Let me tell you about this.
Hear the story again.
All right, so we're going to tell the story because Christy was not around for it. We were just hanging out on the couch today, and Julie was like, I have to watch Lake Placid. That's one of my all-time favorites. So we're like, okay, we watched Lake Placid. It's a funny, fun, creature feature kind of movie. It's great. And then we found out that there were like
7
7
Lake
Placid
Placid movies. Yeah.
So then we put on Lake Placid 3 because there was a picture of a woman in a bikini inside a crocodile's mouth. And so we put it on, and it's basically just it's naked women and CGI crocodiles the whole time, but like CGI that like a 5-year-old
Right.
could do. So it was pretty great, and I'm inspired now to become a movie maker.
So
And
kind of like
Sharknado
Sharknado.
coming from Level
I was gonna
Studios.
say, the sounds like Tornado produced, shared producing set with them. How old is this movie?
I think it was 2010, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so young enough to know better, but old enough to know better.
Old enough to know better. But...
One of those. All right, I'm gonna mute myself again.
Wait, I missed what this comment was for. What's boring? Not Jason's Lake Placid, is it?
Maybe it's Jason's sad face when he's muted.
Is Betty White in it too? That's what so happened.
No, but the CGI was like ridiculous. Like I said, there at one point the guy was punching the head because he was getting eaten, and his whole hand was like going through the head, like it just disappearing into the CGI and then reappearing. And I was like, did you even like try to line this up? You know?
And Joe, no, there was no Betty White in it, which was a huge disappointment because she really made that first movie. It was all about the Betty White.
And the swearing.
And the swearing.
By the Betty White.
Yes, because it was funny. When old people swear, I just love it.
Well,
Yeah.
when Betty White swears.
There's something about Betty White. No one can resist that.
So do you want me to swear, Jason? The old person swearing?
What are you? When did you turn 60, Jane? Are you 60 yet?
Huh?
Are you 60 now?
No.
No, Katie, you told me she was 60.
I said she wasn't.
I like how she was like, huh? Like the perfect.
Yeah, I thought that was on purpose.
How did we derail ourselves already? We haven't even begun a topic and we're already off topic.
Well, we gotta hear more about our guest books here. I'm gonna mute myself so that people can actually understand what you guys are saying, because apparently I'm ruining everything. All right, so I'm going dark here. Christie, tell us about what you write.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I have 2 books out actually. One is Anatomy of a Darkened Heart. Might be a little bit of glare there. And the other one is Brotherhood of Secrets. And they are both psychological suspense. They take place in the Victorian era. They are also take place in America. So Victorian America is not like usually what you see. You usually see Victorian England. So I do have a 3rd book that I've been working on for a while. These are standalone books. The 3rd one will also be a standalone book, but it's really best if you read them all together. I wrote them to be standalones in case something sounds good to you and something doesn't. I wanted to cover all my bases, but if you read them in the order they're supposed to be in, you'll pick up on a lot more stuff between all the characters, and the 3rd book is going to be the exact same way. So I'm working really hard on that. I'm hoping to release it this year. So that's mostly what I write. You can also find other genres that I write in different anthologies and poetry and stuff like that. And on my Patreon, I also do microfiction and positivity. So I kind of do everything.
Between the 2 titles so far and the 3rd one coming out, the characters are the same. There's a crossover.
There are crossovers, but they're not always the same. So the first one focuses on the Whitestone family, and it's more of like a claustrophobic family feel. And the second one does have some crossover, and you'll find some of the same characters here and there, but it mostly focuses on a locksmith shop. And they have kind of different psychological themes as well.
That is so awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I
Thanks
love
all.
that.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was muted already.
There you go.
I got the finger on the trigger on that mute button right now.
I did not mute it. No, that is cool though. I love crossovers when you blend, the books and characters from one to another, and you pick up a new book and somebody you know is in it. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I find that really exciting too. I always look forward to that, especially in series and stuff. This is I always call it a collection because it's not like you have to read one after the other. But, there is like one scene, for example. I don't know if you've done this, Marina. You tell me. I have one scene in the second book that happens in the first, but it's from a totally different perspective. And so it is different, but you'll recognize it. I like doing that kind of stuff here and there. So you can see it totally differently.
Yeah, I've done that too. It's awesome.
It's like, when you're writing it, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, I know what he was thinking.
The closest, I guess, I have to it is my latest Good Morning Bellingham. It's a really multiple POV. So I explored that a little bit with exploring the same situation from different perspectives. So you get like a more holistic picture by the end of it.
That's
I
really
like that.
cool
That's
because
really cool.
everything comes from a different perspective depending on who views it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that you can get so much depth out of that, and that alone, never mind the rest of what you have in there.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I'm all about the characters. Like the primary thing for me is I'm very character driven. plot is always secondary to me, honestly. It's all about that character development, which I guess is kind of the definition of literary fiction. For some, I know it's a very broad category. It's like means different thing to different people. But for me, it's all about the character development. So to get to explore a situation from different set of eyes, because as readers, you know, we throw our work out there and our readers will read it, listen to it with their own set of goggles.
Mhm.
So you're kind of doing it yourself by having different characters approach the same situation and saying, hey, what do you see here?
That's such a good point. Readers do put their own perspective onto the scenes that you
Yeah.
write, and sometimes they see it totally differently than you had intended on writing it.
Yeah, I always wondered about this in high school, you know, when you sit there and you talk about symbolism and you're like, did he really mean anything by those blue curtains, or are we doing that just because we're supposed to?
Yeah, author intention questions, aren't they fun? Yeah.
This is my favorite meme. The clouds were or the curtains were fucking blue.
Right. We just put a color in there. Come on.
It's all about that word count.
Yeah, we were just talking about the other day where they were talking about, like, because I was an English major and a creative writing major, and so people are always like, you know, you can't just read literal, you know, because some people are really literal and some people are always like finding the hidden meaning behind stuff. So the blue curtains symbolized his depression and this dark period he was going through, and then the author's like, no, they were just blue curtains. Like, guys, come on.
Yeah, they're just blue.
But the curtains were like white elephants.
Right.
Not everything has a double meaning. Sometimes they're just blue.
Well, Julia was telling me that every sentence basically needs to be some kind of metaphor.
Oh God.
Like poetry of some sort. I was like, wow, I just can't follow that.
No, I was saying
And it has to be an iambic pentameter too.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was talking, when we were talking about poetry, I was talking about, like, there's, like, telling, like, you know, how we say don't tell when you write fiction. There's a lot of telling that goes on in poetry where they're like, oh, I feel my sorrow, it is the raindrops of tears, and I'm so sad, and it pierces my soul. And it's like, that's telling. Like, that's so, like, it doesn't, like,
Well,
I don't feel it.
When you gave me some examples of the poets you don't like, wasn't it like Rob Cano, something like
yeah.
that you hated? Robert Cano, something like that? You absolutely hated him?
Yeah.
That was one of the big ones. I can't remember the other guys, but that was
No,
fun.
Robert was the one that, like, agrees with me on this, you know, the whole telling, and, you know, he's just as picky as I am about poetry.
Well, he's picky?
He's
Really?
very picky about poetry because he writes it himself, so, yeah.
See, but there's also the element of over descriptive and flowery language too that tends to slow your words down and slow the story down. So you have to find that nice balance.
It doesn't have to be flowery to be showing, though.
Yeah,
Right.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not necessarily synonymous. But honestly, it's the best editorial note I ever got. The show don't tell. And I think it took me like solid 5 drafts to get that like aha moment. Like, oh, I suddenly get what you mean. And that's like my pet peeve. Now I'm like, you know, I'm a big expert now, right? So now when I read others, I'm like, too much telling. There's too much telling.
Amanda, don't slink away. We want you here. Amanda says, and now as a poet, I may slink away. Ouch. Oh, Katie's trying to do that at the same time as me. See, we do that all the time. We try to post
Right.
the comment and then it flips back.
Yeah.
But you know what? The showing and not telling thing is something that I am actually working on actively. So even today, as I wrote, I'm writing a scene that's supposed to be scary for the character. So every sentence I write, instead of explaining what's happening, which is what I really want to do because it's what's happening, I'm like, okay, no. I got to flip this. Explain how she feels about what's happening. And it's kind of a foreign thing when you first try to do it, but it has so much more impact for people.
Right.
Well, one of the editing tips you can do just to self-edit ahead of yourself, and I know, Julia, you're going to agree with this, is you look for certain keywords, and if they're in your manuscript, you reword the sentence. And if you use feel, heard, saw, words that are literally telling people what your character is doing or seeing or feeling, get rid of it, change it. Because then you're definitely overtelling.
But I noticed you left out the word was, which is the other one that people like to say you need to axe.
You do not need to axe was. It has grammatical purposes.
And Joe,
You
it's my
don't
fault.
overuse it.
Joe, is when I'm muted, Joe, we can understand Marina just fine. It's when I'm not muted, it's her feed seems to get garbled. So it is my fault for some reason that's happening. I'm not used to not being perfect. I don't know what to tell you guys. But I really like
Does
this.
anybody have Facebook up in the background?
I've closed everything.
Yeah, I did too. I just closed Facebook. I'm like, oh, I still have that up. Okay.
And I typically will keep YouTube open because the chat window is faster on YouTube than it is on StreamYard.
Mhm.
Okay.
I was going to say, though, a lot of people say, like, don't use was, it's passive voice. No, passive voice is when the object of the sentence becomes a subject. So the ball was thrown by Jason rather than Jason threw the ball. So that's very different than she was running through the forest. You know, so don't feel like you can't use the word was, because like I said, it has a lot of purposes other than.
Well, give us an example based on that. She was running through the forest one. Can you do the same example with that? Like you
That
did
is an example.
with the ball? Like is she was running through the forest, is that a good way to use it or a bad way to use it?
That would be a fine way to use it.
Okay.
Perfectly acceptable.
Okay, so that's acceptable. So she was running through the forest is acceptable, guys.
Right. The thing is, like I said, you don't want to make the object of the sentence, so the ball, you don't want to make that the subject, like, because that's when you're getting into the passive voice. So if you can say, like, something was done by zombies, then that's when you know it's passive voice.
Gotcha. Okay.
But, like, some people just completely avoid was, and I'm like, you know, for a variety of sentence, I like using different grammar tenses. So it's like, she was running through the woods rather than always she ran, she threw the ball, she did this, she did that. That can get very repetitive in a non-productive way.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like she was running through the woods when.
Right,
Something
yeah. So you
happened.
get variety in the sentence structure and
Yeah.
cadence and music going in the language and yeah.
When a wolf jumped out.
Right, yeah. Jane
Sorry.
gets it.
Sorry, going the death path. Sorry.
And that's why she's the idea person, because she just took that sentence and she just started writing a novel.
Nice job, Jane.
That's
Thank
what she's
you.
good at.
What,
My brain's doing that right now. So.
well, and you've written like 40 or 50 books, something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that.
Oh, wow.
Something
So she-
like that.
Wow.
Kudos.
That's amazing.
She's
Thank you.
definitely the idea person for
Since
sure.
2010, so it's not all my life.
Wow. What's your genre, Jane?
It's more impressive.
Paranormal suspense,
Oh, wow.
right, maybe horror-ish, erotica on the side.
That's very productive, though. You said you started in 2010?
I missed what you said. Can you repeat
Oh,
it?
sorry. You said you started writing when?
2010, so 10
Wow.
years.
That's very productive.
And I work full time. And I
Nice.
have a family.
It's amazing.
Wow. My kids were
Really.
quarantined for 2 weeks, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to write a sentence.
Do you use sprints to help you? We were talking about, like Julia was talking about writing sprints before. Do you use that?
Yeah, more so, yes. I have all along, I guess. Because we used to do sprints on Backspace when I was part of that organization, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, I do it when I'm stuck. As Katie knows, when I'm writing, I'm like,
yeah. And even
great
like if what
thing.
you write is not great, or you're trying to get something out of the way, sort of, something that probably isn't going to fit, you can sort of force it out and then move around it after that.
Right, exactly, or smooth it out after that.
Yeah.
Just getting the rough stuff out.
You can't edit what's not written, so just write something.
Right.
Yeah. And it's so often that like muscle memory too. I feel like if you write and you write and you write, even if only one sentence of that will remain in your final draft, it's still necessary. Like you're not going to get to that sentence if you don't dump all this other stuff out. But for me personally, I don't know if anyone else writes this way, but first chapter is very important to me. Like until I get it more or less in its final state, I can't move on. Like that's where I get the voice of my characters the clearest, the direction the clearest. Like I need that like done, and then I can move on. Is that weird? Does anyone else do that?
Everyone has their own style.
I would say I'm the opposite because I'm very much, if I get stuck, put it in brackets and say, like, I need this to happen and then skip ahead. So, like, if I obsess about chapter 1, then, like, I could be working on that for months.
I
And
think that's more
never.
common, what you're
Yeah.
saying. You're like,
So, like, what I'll do is I'll write something down and get, like, the basics and then just keep skipping ahead where I need to as I figure out the plot. Then, like, after the whole thing's written, I go back and say, okay, now that I know what's happened, what's the perfect setup for it?
yeah, and that's what I typically hear. Like, for me, for some reason, that first chapter is the most crucial for me as a writer, just to get the feel for those characters. Like my Effortless series, it's a 2-part series, and the first chapter in here is pretty much like what I've had from the very beginning.
Can you show us the book cover again?
So it's Effortless is book 1, and Inevitable is book 2, and it's in, like, it's still literary fiction, and it's more in that immigrant lit. You know, the protagonist is the first generation Russian Jewish American, so, you know, write what you know. And it's her kind of coming of age, kind of, and finding her own footing in this world. But the way the first chapter was written, I couldn't move on to the rest of the 2 books until I had it down pretty much pat. But I think it's more time efficient to do what Julia was saying, is to just continue and then go back and just do it that way.
I have, like, a little bit of an obsessive nature, which is why I'm just like, oh, if I get into that perfectionist mode, because, like, I've been working on not being a perfectionist about, like, art, about writing. So, like, if I get into perfectionist mode, I could sit and work on something for months without making any progress. So that's really why I'm just like, brackets, this has to happen, jump ahead. I can always go back and work on it as I figure stuff out. What I did to figure out my characters this time, because it's new characters, it's in the same universe as my last trilogy, but there's some new characters, is I wrote a prequel story. And that really helped me because, you know, I like giving out, like, a freebie story to introduce the series to people. And so I was like, oh, I get to figure out my main character while I write this fun little side story. And then it ended up being a big part of the plot for the upcoming book.
So when did you write the prequel? When did you get more of a feel for your character? After the initial publication?
No, this is for my book that I'm writing right now.
Oh,
I wrote the
and then you
prequel
wrote the
story
prequel
to get
to
to know
that.
the character. But that helped me to not obsess so much about chapter 1 because I was like, well, I kind of have an idea of what she's like from writing the prequel, so I can just kind of jump into figuring out the story, the plot of it.
Oh, that's neat.
Anybody else want to chime in on their writing style? Jane?
I was going to say that, yeah, when we wrote this, there, I learned a lot of Katie's style, which I incorporated into mine. So I wasn't just all linear anymore. And mind you, this is not the paperback, but the ebook is 99 cents this week. Yay! But writing that, learning how Katie writes, because we were working together, it was very different. To still put stuff down and do like what Julie says, you know, these parentheses and then move on. And I'm most of the time linear. You know, I have done. What are you laughing at?
I was coughing and I was like, it's the corona.
Okay.
It's petrifying to cough in public right now. You feel like someone's going to come up and Lysol you.
You can't have allergies.
Post nasal, and it's like, oh my God. I'm trying to
I actually heard that happen to someone in real life. Someone literally sprayed them with Lysol. It was at a hospital, and they had to explain that that's assault. You can't do that to people. Like, it was to a worker. And people have asthma. Like, do not spray Lysol, people.
Yeah, I know, and people have allergies. I'm starting to hype up ever since I cleaned out the garden. This week I was just, because we had to, you know, madly clean that out and put stuff out for pictures. And now I'm just like hoarse.
Hi.
It's just like you. And I'm like, my nose itches and everything itches. And I'm like, shit.
That's
cough.
better.
Anyway, that's off topic again. Sorry. But
It is very topical and relevant.
true.
Wait,
Um,
can
so
you tell me about your tattoo,
people in
Marina,
the
though?
face Lysol when they sneeze or cough, please. But
This one?
I learned to do that, and I did that in one of the next books that I wrote outside of the one with Katie. So it was really nice to be able to do that and jump back and forth. Oh, I like
What does the beat it one mean?
Well, the Beat It is a Michael Jackson fan, and when I got it, actually 2 members of my family were dealing with cancer, so it had that double meaning. And one of those people was my father, and he passed away from pancreatic cancer 2 years ago. And this is for him. He was a big fan of like a singer-songwriter in Russia. I guess the closest equivalent would be like Bob Dylan, kind of like social awareness kind of thing. And I have this clear memory of him telling me about this song that was deeply symbolic about hunting wolves, and it's really a whole play on communism. And I decided to get the wolves. I got a wolf pack. They're running because they're hunted. So, yeah. That's my story. I got more, but it's winter, so.
That's awesome, and I absolutely love the Beat It. It's so bold. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Oh, and Amanda has $5 worth of birthday money, and she heard 99-cent book. Amanda, I mean, I feel like anybody here could probably sell you a book.
Yep.
I went
threefuriespress.com.
James,
Off topic again.
What?
You said you guys wrote, so you co-wrote this book.
Yes.
What was-
We wrote a trilogy.
Oh, wow.
So
What's your method? Do you like alternate chapters? Do you write live together? Or I heard different ways people approach co-writing.
we just started the story, and she would write the things that popped into her head, and I would do the bridges, or I'd write something that popped in my head and she'd do the bridges, and then we'd edit and layer to the point where my husband didn't even know which ones I wrote.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yes. My father couldn't figure it out either. So, and my father's my biggest fan, probably.
Oh, indie now. Yes, it is Vladimir Vysotsky. Yes.
Yes. So it was, Katie and I, it was easy. That's the only way to put it. We worked so well together.
Did you have an outline, or did you just like talk, or how did you figure out exactly?
We had meetings.
Yeah.
We'd pop on every so often and just touch base with each other. Or if we got to a stuck point in the story, we'd work through a couple of different ideas. And we had an easier time, though, I think, because we've known each other for 10 odd years.
Yeah.
We've beta read each other's books. We kind of know each other's style. We know how each other thinks. And both of us are pretty analytical when it comes to figuring plot out. We may not hard outline, but we definitely work through all the what if scenarios.
Right.
And so it was really easy for us to kind of just merge each other's ideas together. And like she said, if I wrote something and I couldn't figure out where it goes next, she had that next point for me.
Mm-hmm. So
That's
awesome.
It sounds like a great partnership.
It worked out really well. It was fun too.
I could never do that.
How long did it take you?
We did 3 books in 6 months.
Yep. Yeah.
They're both really fast writers. Mhm.
That's amazing.
Not little skinny things.
They're serious. They're serious. Oh, we've got a great comment from Rebecca here. Rebecca says, Jane wrote, Katie cried and filled in, tightened up, and wrote too. Then she blinked and had more words back from Jane and cried while she wrote and made the fight scenes. Awesome. That sounds like it's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, I go with that.
Yeah. I did have one fight scene that I asked my son help with, because I was like, what do you do if you have 2 people attacking you? They have weapons, you don't.
Katie helped me with my fight scenes in my prequel story because I was like, I know nothing about weapons, and she had come to visit Jason to do a library series last April. And so she brought her practice wooden swords.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Come at me." And I was like, "Ah,
Exactly like that. Come at me.
yeah, she's like, "Come at me," but then she's like, "But don't hit my knuckles." And then so I was like, "I can't come at you then because I'm the clumsiest person in the world and I will hit your knuckles."
Well, my son's a black belt in Aikido, so
We
can take
had
it.
fun. We worked through some
great
maneuvers.
times.
We showed how you can actually, swing the sword, what it feels like, to hit, what moves you have when the swords connect. It was fun to go through
And
it.
then my sister was in the background, like, "Don't hit the lamp, Julia," because we were in a hotel room. So you break it, you buy it. So, but no, it was really interesting to feel like the momentum of the sword and stuff because, like, I'd never had any experience with anything like that. So that was super helpful.
Katie does write great fight scenes, Rebecca. You are correct there. That's what got me hooked on her to begin with. Is she gave me a copy of Dissension, I think, the first book in her Chronicles of the Uprising series, and I was like,
I
whoa,
love that series.
this
That
is
was awesome.
good stuff. So, but I did want to make a quick comment to Jane here, because you mentioned your son. Do you remember when your son was on the show and I was asking him about what he thought of your sex scenes in your books?
Yeah.
Man, that was a great conversation.
He'll
That
be
was
he'll
just
be
a
back at the
special
house
time.
next week. He's out at game night at my daughter's. But he's like, "You have the show tonight?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Well,
He's so excited about coming on again. So
Well, good. We can't wait to have him. And Amanda Kay, tell us what kind of books you like to read, because I'll hook you up with some reading too if you just want some reading. But I have a question for you guys. And Katie, I've already heard your answer, so I'm not interested in your answer on this one. I would like to know how you all make your readers connect with your characters or fall in love with them or even just care about them so that they care about what happens with them. I want to turn this over to our two guests first this evening, if that's possible. Do either one of you want to take a swing at that?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself.
Well, like I said before, for me, it's all about the characters. Everything I write is character driven. And my goal is not to necessarily make my characters likable as much as I want them to be relatable and just real and raw and flawed and not perfect. I don't really like happy endings either, because I like to ground them as much as possible in reality. For the Effortless series, the one that I showed you guys before, the Effortless and Inevitable, that's the most common. Here we are. The most common feedback I got from reviewers is, "Helen is so real. I feel like I was reading about me, and this is my life, and this is how I feel." And that's music to my ears, because realism is what I strive for in my characters. And I think that's how I think I can truly connect with the reader, is through that protagonist.
I need to read your books, Marina, because we believe exactly the same things. Like, exactly. I love unhappy endings or realistic, honest endings, which are unhappy endings a lot of the time. They're not perfect.
Exactly.
Things don't turn out perfectly usually in real life, and there are real flaws in people. One of the things that really matters in my characters is unsolvable flaws. It's not always easy for somebody to say, like, yes, I recognize my flaw and I'm going to fix it. A lot of times they don't recognize it and they can't fix it, especially if they're in an abusive situation, which is more toward what I do in Anatomy of a Darkened Heart. So, that has more to do with an abusive family situation. And, I'm not going to give away, obviously, the ending or anything like that, but every character has major flaws. There are a lot of likable and unlikable things about most characters, but there's a lot more unlikable than likable. And in my second book, again, you have a lot of unsolvable flaws that lead to and mistakes that people make that can't be fixed, and that happens in real life a lot. And I feel I always feel like when I read a book where everything is perfect, and I felt this a lot as a teenager, everything always turned out fine for everyone. And, they just weren't going through the same stuff that I was. And I really felt alone, even reading YA fiction, which I think might be different today. But when I was reading it, it was everything's great. And, it's all going to turn out fine. And even the outcast becomes the most popular kid in school, So I can relate to any of that. Who can relate to that? So
Exactly.
I like to make, I like to write characters where you see yourself in it. You see that, sometimes things are not so easy, and that's either okay, or you need to find a way out now. You need to get out so that you don't end up like these characters,
Yeah, and we as people, we do make the same mistakes, and why shouldn't fictional characters?
Right.
I think dialogue also helps keeping the dialogue as realistic as possible.
Mm.
I think that just goes hand in hand with keeping the characters as real and flawed as possible. I think that's how we really reach that reader.
Definitely. So with mine, it takes place in Victorian America, and I had to make a decision whether it was going to sound very Victorian or not. And it's a trickier thing than you might think, because there are a lot of phrases and words that existed back then than you wouldn't think actually existed then. You have to make decisions whether you're going to use them or not, because there will be people who say, oh, you got it wrong or something. So I was super, super careful with what I did. And I have a dictionary from the 1850s that I use consistently. But I also wanted it to be readable and interesting. I didn't want people getting lost in classic language that they might not be interested in. So I did modernize a tiny bit to make it readable, but I do only use words that actually existed then. I actually couldn't use the word jog because it meant something else.
That makes perfect sense in the genre and in the time period. So that's completely appropriate. And it sounds like a very delicate line to dance.
Yeah, I was just gonna say flaws are really important. We were talking about how I hate a Mary Sue character. Whenever I read a book, and especially in certain genres, even though I write young adult, when I start reading a young adult book and it's a Mary Sue character, I'm like, I can't finish this book. But another really important thing to keep in mind for characters is motivations. Why do they do what they do? What drives them towards their story goals? Because that'll help make them relatable as well. When we can understand why the bad guy is doing what he's doing. Maybe he has a good reason or good to him, and then it just makes that character so much more real.
I love having flawed characters, exactly like you're saying, Julia, where somebody thinks they're doing the right thing and they clearly are not. It's very obvious to anybody reading, but that character is so flawed that they think they're doing a good job. And I have that I have to say most heavily in Brotherhood of Secrets, but there's a lot of truth in that. A lot of times in real life, we think we're doing the right thing and it's either hurting somebody or something like that. And we only realize way later.
I completely agree, Julia. The unexplained background sometimes, when you don't get that motivation, it's it just seems. I feel like I either read something like that or watched a movie where a character was like that. I'm like, but why? You just throw it out there, and I don't actually get the character. Oh, it was a movie. It was which apparently was directed by Madonna. I had no idea until the credits. And there were two storylines going on with the King of England who abdicated for an American wife, and a woman named Wally in modern day United States who was obsessed with her. And she had an abusive husband, but we never understood very particular decisions that they kept harping on without the actual motivation behind it. So it was kind of I guess we hate him, but it just felt kind of unfinished, and that really irked me for some reason.
That's very empty, and you can't really buy it.
Yeah, I hate is when it's evil.
That just completely.
Yeah, when it's just evil for the sake of being evil.
Bad guy. Here's a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Do it.
When when you have a bad guy, but you don't know why he's bad, he just he's going to do the bad guy thing because he's a bad guy and he's got to be the bad guy, and it's just but why,
You know what really pulls me out of a book or a movie really quickly, and poor Julie has heard me bitch about books and movies for 2 days straight now because I've been really tired and crabby from waking up early for work, and so I'm just like, I hate this and I hate this. But this is a legit one, I think. Um, is when a character does something that is out of character for them and we don't have an explanation. I really, really hate that, whether it's for the good or for the bad. They're making a good or bad decision, but if it's not in line with what that character has been showing, consistently throughout the book or movie, and I'm just like, well, where the hell did this come from? This is not this character whatsoever. But if you've got some kind of tension building up that's reaching a boiling or a snapping point, okay, then I can believe a decision that goes takes a 180. But yeah, if you're gonna go completely in a different direction with your character, I feel like there needs to be something more behind it. There needs to be a little bit of explanation there.
Right, and I haven't read anything by Marina, but I know Christie does an awesome job with her characters, and when they make the decisions, you can feel like, oh, this is really like this person made this decision to do it. I read her second book, and there's the little subplots going on, but like it was always in character. So I don't know if Christie has anything to say
about when you have like heavy decisions to make and things like that. Yeah, I always think of it in terms of, I phrase it like the weight of things. I always sort of weigh things out, and it drives me a little bit nuts in a book when there's, for example, a big buildup, and then you have a very short, or even skipping over the actual action because it was either too hard to write or whatever. You have to dig yourself into corners, but you also have to get yourself out in a way that's not only believable but hard. And like that's what I call it, like the weight. If you've put so much weight on a difficult situation, you'd better give it that much weight getting that person out. There's nothing I can't stand more than when you skip over the good part.
Well,
Or when it's too easy, why did I waste all that time reading?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you've got 80,000 words of buildup, you better make it satisfying. And one person that really does that well is actually this lady right here, Rebecca Jonesy. Oh, wait a second, what is she talking about now? Never traffic children when the
That's
far
good advice.
when the Fae are around. Okay,
Very good advice.
I'm not sure what that's about. However, I will tell you. I've only read Rebecca's erotica, her naughty stuff, and she gives you some build up, but there's really good payoff. So if you need advice on that, Rebecca, she knows how to really give you a good.
Well, I was telling you about this earlier with her Fae series, though. Like, she will set up, like, an impossible problem, and you're just like, there's no way this can be solved, like, and then she comes up with, like, the most amazing, like, solution that, like, I never would have thought of, and I'm just like, oh, she did it again,
That's so satisfying for both the writer and the reader, too.
And from the editor point of view,
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It is
Nothing
so satisfying as an editor.
And you know what's amazing is when you run into a problem and you've been stuck on a problem for months and months and months, and then your good friend comes over to visit you, who happens to also be a writer and an editor and a publisher, and you sit and you talk about your plot for a couple minutes, and then all of a sudden 5 minutes later it's like, oh wow, this major plot problem that I could not get past, so I could not keep writing this book. I now have a good, clear direction on where I'm going to go. And subplots. And I'll tell you what, that is such a good frickin' feeling to know that, oh, okay, I've actually got this. So that's a lesson, too, for everybody. If you're having problems, reach out to other writers, because...
Yeah, just, Julia, do you make house calls? Maybe not right now, in a few months.
That goes back to our saying about having a tribe.
That, Marina? Oh, I'm sorry. Could you repeat what you just said, Marina? I'm sorry. I was
making a very clever joke about Julia making house calls and helping out authors. Not right now during social distancing.
Yes, if anyone wants to pick me up to hang out for a couple days,
Well, you can telecommute though.
Yeah, definitely. No, but
you can hold Skype meetings
with other authors is like the best ever. Like when I get stuck, I go to my sister or I go to Rebecca, or I even hit up Jason and Katie, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, you guys, help.
Oh yeah. You've gotten some of my emails like that too. Same with Jane.
Well, and just because something's hard for you as the writer doesn't mean somebody else doesn't just have an idea that's, oh well, you just didn't see around that corner, that's all.
Right.
You know, there's a really easy fix for you, or there's a complicated fix, but it's going to make this really, really cool. But yeah, reaching out for help is sometimes great, and that's something I don't do enough. It took Julia coming all the way to Holland for me to be able to
Well,
get
we had a
some help.
3-hour car drive, so we had lots. We could talk a lot about his book.
Yeah.
Well, mostly we talked about how much I dislike young adult fiction, though.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm sorry, everyone. I know you all love YA stuff. I do not.
I don't like YA.
Oh, good. You know, we were just saying, Julie and I, while you were talking about your books, and we were muted. I was saying that I would really get along with Marina really well because she's dark and she's a little bit pessimistic about characters. I'm like, yeah, I like this.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to, like, urban fantasy can be a little grittier and a little darker. Like, you don't want to read the contemporary romantic young adult. Like, that's the one you don't like. Yeah.
Nope. Well, and there's some stuff that, like, I really like the wording and the pacing that people use for young adult fiction, because it's usually a little bit more fast paced. It's sometimes easier to digest, and you know, by the time I sit down to read, my brain's usually pretty tired, and it's kind of small anyway. So it's like I don't always want Stephen King. You know, I always don't want tons and tons of description and big words.
Yeah.
I just want some easy stuff, but I also want it to be relatable for me as an adult person, you know? So I've really gotten into, Katie, I'm sorry, I've really gotten into Victoria Schwab, V.E. Schwab, who's fantastic, and her books are, I think I don't even know how they're marketed now, but they're adult books, but they read as fast and as easy as a YA book, and they're absolutely phenomenal. So it's like when I find an author like that, I will just burn through all of their books because I'm like, oh my gosh, I found somebody I can really read and enjoy. So yeah, but that's my rant. I don't like teenagers and feelings. That's all.
I think like a little bit of that. My daughter with Christie was saying how I think now we have more diversified YA, but like that stigma still stays perhaps. Like maybe that's what gets in my way sometimes. I've tried some YA stuff and I didn't hate all of it, but I don't know, just something about it, it reads a little young. So maybe I'm a little old.
Yeah.
I'm not the intended audience.
I was going to say to Mike, what I hate worse than young adult, and I write young adult, so I can criticize, you know, I'm going to criticize. Yeah. Insta-love.
Yes.
Especially when it's like, I read a book and I was just like, I saw this coming from like 3,000 miles away. And they were like, oh, insta-love. And, you know, it was a past life. You know, they were lovers in a past life and she'd been reincarnated. So, of course. And I was just like, oh my God, I saw this coming. And it's so, you know, yeah.
That was exactly what I was going to say, Julia, the insta-love thing. I hate the insta-love thing. And one of the things that used to drive me nuts when I would read YA as an actual young adult was, how do they always know? They always seem to know what one person wants and how the other person should act, and everything works out perfectly, and like they're best friends right away and everything's great. And it just seems that everybody knows everything, and I don't get it. Relationships are complex and they're difficult, and that's a good thing to show to young adults so they can get it and they can feel like they're not the only ones. I don't think it really even helps them identify. I don't know why young adults like insta-love stuff. I guess it's a dream, maybe, but otherwise I don't get it myself. I don't see it as a reflection of reality.
I have 3 young adults. Well, actually 2. Well, oh my God, they're all actually adults now, but they're all in that kind of age range, and the insta-love thing, they really think it's real. And it's not because of what they're reading or they're writing, it's because their emotions are going so crazy, you know, so many chemicals and hormones and all sorts of stuff in their body. And so, you know, if my daughter or my son, you know, goes out to hang out with somebody, I know that, okay, it's going to be the most serious thing in the world the next day. And which is really frustrating, of course, for an old person who's been through dozens of terrible relationships. But, you know, I think that it really does happen, but it's not real, you know. It's just a crush. It's not a real love thing like a lot of books sometimes say it is. I don't know. And I've never
But
read
for
one of
them, you're
yours.
right. It does feel like it. And so when you write for that market, you're attempting, I think, to replicate that for them because that's your intended audience.
But I feel like the instant thing is what gets me. It's not the crush that feels like it's going to last forever. It's not your first boyfriend who you want to marry. It's that I see you from across the room and I'm instantly like flushed and like I can't think straight and like and then when we talk and we just instantly connect. I think that's like kind of what Christie was going for. I'm like my main character, my protagonist that I'm writing now, has social anxiety. So it's like she doesn't feel instant love. She feels I'm awkward, and is this person they're just going to want to be friends with me? I just want friends, But I feel like even teenagers are wanting more realistic than that fairy tale love at first sight.
Well, I think what's so funny that you just brought up that we're trying to recreate that. The protagonist in my Effortless series is actually actively trying to kind of go after a crush, and it really doesn't work out for her because she's trying to recreate something she just aged out of. It's just not a realistic emotion, as she eventually realizes. But it's literally what you said, is you're trying to recreate something, and it's tough. And I guess some authors succeed and it's great and it clicks, as long as it clicks with the right audience, right? Like, who am I to judge that someone potentially does like the insta love? I don't know. I don't, but as long as the audience clicks, hey.
That's, well, you hit it right on the head there. If people are enjoying your writing, you're doing something right. You really are. It's not for everybody. It won't be for me, and that's okay because there are millions of us authors out there making books, and your book is going to find the right home with somebody. So
yeah, there's an audience for everything. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really funny. The word recreate really clicked with me because I'm like, oh, Helen is literally trying to do that, and she keeps falling on her face.
I like that. I like when authors include things like social anxiety and depression and things like that are real and that we now know so much more about, and that more people are being diagnosed for because doctors know the signs more. And it's so much better to see something real like that, in my opinion, even
And
as young adults.
right?
Yeah, and to say, hey, I'm not alone. But even if, let's say, you have like a really nice romance in a YA, if you could see that somebody who isn't perfect, right, which is normal, that's what humans are, imperfect, can find love while they have social anxiety or depression or name something, isn't that so much better than having someone perfect find someone else perfect? I think it's much, more relatable in general. And it's also very encouraging for young adults who are still growing up.
I'm just going to say hallelujah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen.
And representation and normalizing things. And, one of my other podcasts is called Unafraid, and it's working with people in the LGBTQ plus community. And it's just about getting stories out there, because the more often you hear a story or see a situation, the more normal it becomes for you. So if you're reading a book, about a young boy or girl that has, serious depression or bipolar or any other myriad of disorders going on, it becomes more normal to you, and you can start to understand it. And when we understand these things, I think we become a little bit more enriched and a little bit more whole as humans, and we can go forth and be better people for that. So I think that's a very good point.
Well, every time you see something, when you read a book, you step into someone else's shoes and you see things from someone else's perspective, and that teaches you empathy, and that teaches you to understand that people face different things than what you face as an individual person. And so that's why I think reading is so important, for everyone, but even for writers. If you want to imagine new worlds, you want to imagine new characters, like, get to know as many different types of people as you can through reading, through meeting people. A lot of us are introverts, so maybe you'd prefer to read. But, like, experience all of these things, and then your writing will be enriched as well, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Ooh, Amanda K says, I write poems for funerals.
Ooh.
So yes, an audience for everything. Amanda K, you sound really, really cool. I'm going to have to track you down after this on Facebook. I love that.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I wrote a poem for one of my grandparents' funerals once, and then I decided that I couldn't do it at the last minute because it was just a little bit too much. But yeah, that's a very important thing to do. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were we talking about before? the funeral thing.
You were
Seems like we were
dissing
going
young
somewhere.
adult.
Oh, young adults. Bad young adult. Bad. Lake Placid 3, good. All right, well, we are actually running out of time tonight, guys. I do want, I would like, if they're willing, for each of our guests to kind of give a little shout out on what they're working on right now, or maybe what they just released, anything that they like, and kind of tell our viewers what you've got going on. Christie, you want to take the reins first?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's always so much fun to be here. I never know what we're going to talk about, and I actually like that a lot, to be honest with you. It's a lot of fun. So I am working on the third book in my Dark Victoriana collection. As I said, the first two books are out, and the third one I am currently working on. I've been working on it for quite a while. So I'm really excited about that. If you want to keep up with it, of course, you can go see me on Patreon, which is patreon.com/Christie Stratos. And I do positivity posts and poetry and things like that. I do microfiction, and I do a lot of stuff over there that I don't put anywhere else, including stuff about my life. Like Julia and I share perfectionism, and I talk about that issue, the burnout I had in my corporate life, stuff like that I don't put anywhere else. So you can join me there. And I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. And Pinterest, I don't just save things like Victorian. I save a lot of different kinds of stuff. And I also have my podcast, which is called Writers Showcase Podcast. You can find it on Facebook, and we do live streams. I also post those interviews on SoundCloud and YouTube. So thank you so much again for having me. It was great being here.
You're very welcome. We love having you on, Christie. You're so knowledgeable. I love listening to you because I always learn so much from you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, and Kendra, thanks for tuning in here at the end. Just want to say hi, love you, and we'll see you soon. All right, Kendra's my boss, so I've always got to give a shout out there.
Did she pick up one of Brian's books?
She did. She actually sent me a picture of it. She picked up a paperback of Invincible Heart, so she's reading that now. And I'd really like to send her, Rebecca, I was just talking to Julie about this. I want to send her the books about Mandy.
Mm-hmm.
The books about Mandy, but she does not have an e-reader. I would really like it if you could make it possible for me to get some kind of hard copy to give to her for something to read. All right. Well, Marina, could you please tell us what you're writing, or maybe what you just released?
Sure. First of all, yes, thank you for having me on. This was my first time, and I had such a blast. Please have me on again. This was awesome. My most recent book is Goodbye Bellingham, my multiple POV work. And if you like a good dysfunctional family drama, I think this might be for you. You really get to see diverse set of characters and see them explore disappearance of a central person in their life and how it affects all of them and how they're dealing with it. I am currently trying to outline a future work. I'm a little bit on that chapter 1 thing. And now my kids are quarantined, so send alcohol. And I'll get back to you on my progress. But feel free to check me out. I'm on Facebook because I'm old. I guess it's now the platform for the elders. I try to be on Twitter and on Instagram.
Facebook is for fogies.
I mean, hey, at least I'm not on Friendster, right? My website is marinaraydun.com, and I'm currently trying to do this thing where if you sign up for my mailing list, in addition to getting a chapter of one of my published works, you'll also be getting kind of live updates as I'm working on my new piece. So you'll be kind of, a VAP, a little bit of an accountability buddy. I have this fun idea to share this process this time around. So please sign up. And yeah, please check me out. All my books on Amazon, both in paperback and for all e-readers on Kindle, mostly Kindle. And I would love to be back on here. And if you read my books, please give me a shout out. All reviews welcome. Stay safe and healthy out there.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you.
You guys are absolutely welcome back anytime.
It's like the cat just broke into the room.
Our mascot.
The
It's like,
door was
it's
closed, and all of a
time.
sudden, it opened, and there's the cat.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for watching or listening, everyone. We really appreciate it, and it was great to have both of you on. Jane and Katie, it was great to see you guys again. I haven't talked to you in a while, so this was really fun.
Yes, it was.
Always good. This is my favorite time of the week, I swear.
And you can always go to threefuriespress.com to get great books too.
Yes, you can.
And there's this new author, Rosalind Sparks. We've published a couple.
She's got a book coming out in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah.
I can hear it's really, really good.
It's
Just saying.
steamy. It's
Steamy?
steamy.
I like that
Sex,
stuff.
blood, and rock and roll.
Yes.
Yes.
So check it out. Rebecca's books are on there. My books are on there. Ton of great stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well,
All right, well,
guys,
that'll do it for us this week. Jason, you were going to say it, weren't you? Look at him. He's like, nope, not saying nothing. All right, guys, you know the drill. Like, share, subscribe. Please tell a friend. For the algorithms on YouTube, it's always best if you hit that notification bell. It just helps other people see our stuff. So that way, when you do come on as a guest for our show, you'll be seen by more people. But until then, we'll be back next week with more authors to introduce you to. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.